There are players who are good, and then there is Byron Buxton, a talent so rare it feels almost unfair when fully unleashed. Speed, power, defense, everything packed into one perfect frame. For brief moments, he looks like the best player alive. But those moments never seem to last long enough. Born December 18th, 1993 in Baxley, Georgia, raw athleticism defined him. In high school, he dominated every level with effortless ease. Scouts saw a future superstar, maybe even the next face of baseball. The Minnesota Twins selected him second overall in 2012. From the beginning, expectations reached almost impossible heights. 5-tool potential, the rarest combination in the entire sport. He climbed the minors quickly, dominating with speed and defense. Every highlight hinted at something truly special developing. Then came 2015, his long-awaited major league debut. But reality hit harder than anyone expected. Strikeouts piled up, timing disappeared, confidence started to shake. The game looked faster, tougher, less forgiving at this level. For the first time, Buxton looked human on the field. But even then, flashes of brilliance still appeared unexpectedly. A diving catch, a stolen base, a glimpse of elite potential. Moments that reminded everyone why he was so highly regarded. 2017 became the first true glimpse of what he could be. Gold glove defense, elite range covering impossible ground in center field. At the plate, improvement finally started to show consistently. Home runs, speed, defense, everything beginning to align. For a moment, it felt like the breakout had truly arrived. The superstar version of Buxton was finally taking shape. But just as quickly, the interruptions began again. Injuries started appearing, small at first, then more frequent. Collisions, wrist issues, concussions, each one slowing momentum. Every time he found rhythm, something pulled him away. Every time he rose, something forced him back down. And the pattern began to feel impossible to ignore. Talent was never the issue. It never had been. The issue was time, or more specifically, lack of it. Time on the field, time to build consistency and rhythm. Because without that, even greatness struggles to fully emerge. Still, hope remained that everything would eventually click together. That one full, healthy season could change everything. But baseball doesn't always give players that kind of chance. And for Buxton, the interruptions kept coming relentlessly, turning potential into something incomplete and constantly delayed. A career defined by flashes instead of full seasons. Moments instead of sustained dominance over time. And slowly that becomes the story itself. Not how good he is, but how often he can play. And that's where everything begins to change. Because availability starts to outweigh raw ability. And that's a battle even the most talented players can lose, no matter how special they look at their absolute best. 2020 arrives, shortened season, but something finally starts clicking. Buxton looks different, more confident, more controlled at the plate. The swing tightens, the power begins to show consistently. For the first time, the full package feels close to reality. Then 2021 comes, and everything explodes into another level. Through the first half, he looks like an MVP candidate. A slugging percentage near .650, power numbers off the charts. Home runs flying, speed still elite, defense still unmatched. He isn't just good, he's one of the best in baseball. Every game becomes must-watch when he's fully healthy. A player capable of changing everything with one single play. Then it happens again, the moment everyone starts expecting. A broken hand after getting hit by a pitch. Another injury, another pause, another interrupted season. He finishes with just 61 games despite elite production. And once again, the same question returns louder than ever. What would a full season of this version look like? Because in those 61 games, he looked almost unstoppable. A top 1% talent, clearly above most players. But baseball doesn't reward potential without availability. 2022 begins with hope, but the pattern continues again. Knee issues, hip problems, constant discomfort affecting movement. He plays more games but rarely feels completely healthy. The explosiveness remains, but the body limits its consistency. Every sprint looks slightly cautious, every swing slightly adjusted. Because pain becomes part of the routine now. 2023 brings a major shift in how he's used. No longer playing center field regularly. The risk too high. He becomes a designated hitter more often than expected. A player built on speed and defense, now limited to hitting. It's a necessary adjustment, but it changes everything. Because part of what made him special is now missing. The range and center, the impossible catches, the speed, all reduced to protect what's left of his body. Still, the power remains when he's able to swing freely. Home runs continue. Flashes of brilliance still appear. But the consistency, the rhythm, never fully returns. Because the body won't allow it to last long enough. 2024 arrives, and the pattern feels permanently established. Play, dominate briefly, get hurt, repeat endlessly. A cycle that defines his career more than anything else. And now, the conversation begins to shift again. From potential superstar to one of baseball's biggest what-ifs. A label no player ever wants attached to their name, because it means something never fully came together. Even if the talent was always undeniable. Even if the flashes were brighter than almost anyone else. The story becomes incomplete, fragmented across seasons. And that's what makes it so difficult to define. Because we've seen exactly how great he can be. By now, everyone understands what Byron Buxton is capable of. The problem has never been talent. It never needed explaining. The problem is time, and how little of it he actually gets. Because every season feels like it starts and stops unpredictably. A rhythm that never fully forms before it disappears again. And that creates something deeper than just physical frustration. It creates doubt, not about skill, but about sustainability. Can a career truly exist in fragments like this? Can greatness survive without consistency over time? These are questions that follow him every single season, and they grow louder each time he leaves the field injured. Because every return comes with excitement and quiet fear. Excitement for what he can do, fear of how long it lasts. And that tension defines every moment he plays. A player performing at an elite level under constant uncertainty, knowing that any play could be the one that ends it again. A sprint to first, a dive in center, a swing too aggressive. All routine actions, yet all carrying hidden risk for him. And that changes how the game is played entirely. Because instinct must now compete with self-preservation. Do you go all out, or do you protect what's left? That decision exists in every single moment on the field. And there's no perfect answer that guarantees anything. Meanwhile, the outside world continues forming its own narrative. A player who can't stay healthy, no matter how talented. A superstar who exists only in short, brilliant bursts. And eventually, that narrative becomes impossible to escape. Not because it's entirely fair, but because it's visible. Because games missed are easier to count than potential. And seasons lost carry more weight than highlights remembered. Still, within all of this, the player remains the same. The speed is still there, the power still undeniable. The defense still among the best ever seen in center field. But it exists in fragments, never fully sustained long enough, like a highlight reel stretched across multiple incomplete seasons. And that's where the what if becomes unavoidable. What if he stayed healthy for one full, uninterrupted season? What if those 60-game stretches became 150-game realities? How different would the conversation be around his name? Because in those short windows, he looks like a superstar. A player capable of dominating every aspect of the game. But the windows close before the full picture is complete. And that incomplete picture becomes his defining story. Not failure, not success, but something caught in between. A career measured in flashes instead of full chapters. And that's what makes it so difficult to fully understand. Because the ceiling is clear, but the reality never matches it. And the gap between those two keeps growing over time, until the question becomes part of the identity itself. Not just who he is, but what he could have been. There are players remembered for longevity, and players remembered for peaks. Byron Buxton belongs to a rarer, more complicated category entirely. A player whose peak rivals anyone, but never lasts long enough. Because when he's healthy, he changes the entire game instantly. Speed that alters defenses, power that shifts every pitch. Defense that turns impossible plays into something almost routine. For those moments, he looks like the best player in baseball. But those moments exist in isolation, never fully connected. And that's what defines his story more than anything else. Not what he lacks, but what he cannot sustain. Because greatness without time becomes something unfinished. A masterpiece interrupted before it can ever be completed. And baseball is a sport that rewards accumulation over flashes. Seasons, numbers, durability, all building a lasting legacy. But Buxton's legacy doesn't follow that traditional path. It exists in highlights, moments, and brief, dominant stretches. A career that feels more like a collection than a continuous story. And yet, those moments are impossible to ignore completely. because few players ever reach the level he reaches at his best, which makes the absence of consistency even more noticeable, because we know exactly what's missing every time he's unavailable. We've seen it too clearly to forget or overlook. That's what turns his career into something almost haunting. Not failure, but unrealized potential at the highest level. A constant reminder of what could have been fully achieved if time and health had aligned just a little differently. But in sports, those conditions are never guaranteed. And sometimes they never align the way we hope. Still, that doesn't erase what he has already shown. It only changes how we choose to remember it. Do we focus on the absence or the brilliance within it? Do we measure by seasons or by moments of pure dominance? Because with Buxton, those moments are undeniable and unforgettable. A level of play that very few ever consistently reach, even if he only reaches it in short bursts. And maybe that's what makes his story unique. Not greatness over time, but greatness in its purest form. Unfiltered, explosive, and impossible to sustain for long. A reminder that some players exist outside normal expectations and cannot be measured by the usual standards at all. Byron Buxton is one of those rare players. A talent in the top 1% the game has ever seen, but a body that never allowed that talent to fully unfold. And that contradiction defines everything about his career. Not what he achieved, but what he could not sustain. Still, for those who watched closely, the truth remains clear. At his peak, there were few players better in baseball, even if that peak came and went far too quickly. Byron Buxton, greatness in flashes, unforgettable and incomplete. A reminder that talent alone is never the full story.